Hi, my name is Stefan, I'm from Germany and I have my own company for product development, quality control and sourcing. Back then it was a chance after college to do an internship here, and basically since then I fell in love with Shenzhen and I stayed and continued to stay and worked 8 years in the industry after I started my own company in the same industry that I worked before.
And as the global hardware Silicon Valley, Shenzhen has a very complete hardware supply chain system. What's your opinion about that? Agree or disagree, or why?
Yeah, I completely agree. When we do product development, there's a great supply chain available for us from batteries, PCBs, components that are very easily accessible and very easy to find, which is helping us to make cool products. And for me, on my side, I haven't been to Silicon Valley, but for me is the perfect place to be.
And what do you think are the differences between Shenzhen hardware Silicon Valley and American Silicon Valley?
I think, to be honest, it's probably the speed, because you can find everything very quickly, and for us to make prototypes and samples can be done so quick, and I believe in America it's not possible to do it in Shenzhen speed.
And what do you think is the difficulties of smart hardware entrepreneurship?
To be honest, I think there's a lot of people maybe steal ideas, and Shenzhen is so quick, so if you have a very cool product, it's very easy for them to copy it and to make it better or to make changes. I think that's one of the challenges that people have here. And I think with IP, there's also some issues, but in general, it's all okay.
My name's Tully. I grew up in New England, which is a part of America, and spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, and that's what brought me to Shenzhen, China.
Why did you come to Shenzhen to start a business or come to work?
All right, so I came to Shenzhen because I was working with a startup in Silicon Valley, and I came here to start manufacturing, and that's how it all started.
And as the global hardware Silicon Valley, Shenzhen has a very complete hardware supply chain system. What's your opinion about this?
My opinion about the Shenzhen global supply system is that it's amazing. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is famous for high technology and has a long history with hardware, electronics, but right now it's faster, it's definitely faster to manufacture in China than Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, you can get almost everything, but it usually takes a couple days, and because you can get everything, going from 0 to 1 is still sometimes easier, but going from 1 to 1,000, Shenzhen is a much better place.
What do you think is the difficulties of smart hardware entrepreneurship?
Okay, let's see. You mean in China though?
Yeah,
right.
In here.
In here. Okay, so there are a few difficulties doing hardware development in China. Of course, one is the language and cultural barriers, and the other one is the significant Chinese tariffs, which is, approximately 40% for a lot of foreign components. But there are so many things made here in China. It is possible to make stuff that's made entirely from Chinese components, and it will usually be a lot cheaper.
我叫高斯马萨卡斯，中国的发音高是中华，从日本来的，现在就在深圳。
Why did you come to Shenzhen to start a business or work?
Yeah. 我的工作做的进口产品从中国到日本，我们的产品很多有的开发版、开发硬件开发版，因为我们的合作伙伴很多在深圳，他们做的开发硬件和开发中心，因为如果我现在在深圳。
As the global hardware Silicon Valley, Shenzhen has a very complete hardware supply chain system. What's your opinion about that? Do you agree or not agree?
OK， 我的回答，这个是的，这个我的视频了解一下中国的开发硬件中心和自由的开发硬件中心在深圳。这个视频很有名在日本，很多的日本人知道的深圳的硬件开发中心。
Okay. So the next question is, what do you think are the differences between Shenzhen hardware Silicon Valley and the American Silicon Valley?
Oh, the 情感与投资很一样的。 在深圳或在美国，很多的投资者活动很活泼，还是中国的投资者就医硬件，因为中国有的很多的硬件公司。
Thank you. And what do you think is the difficulties of smart hardware entrepreneurship here?
Difficulties. Wait a while. Difficulties.
It's okay if you can't think of any right now.
中国人做的smart hardware 这个很容易，还是外国人工作在深圳，他们应该了解深圳的文化和深圳的生活习惯，也有中文，这个很困难。
Okay.
My name's Eitan Ginsberg. I'm from Philadelphia in the United States, and I have a super learning and augmenting human intelligence education venture.
And why did you come to Shenzhen to start a business or start working?
Shenzhen has a vibrancy and an energy that's unlike anywhere else in the world. It's constantly growing and moving forward and making itself better, and that culture and that mentality is something that every hungry entrepreneur craves.
Okay, thank you. And as the global hardware Silicon Valley, Shenzhen has a very complete hardware supply chain system. What's your opinion about this? Agree or disagree, and why?
I definitely agree. I've been to Huaqiangbei many times. I think the biggest challenge is getting more and more people to realize that, and that's part of the reason I came here, and what I'm looking to do is to connect more and more people to that ecosystem.
What do you think are the differences between Shenzhen hardware Silicon Valley and the American Silicon Valley?
I think the biggest differences are perception and culture. Perception-wise, the American Silicon Valley has a lot more international recognition, and I think that obviously plays to an advantage and probably has a slight edge in terms of just the amount of venture capital, and also the restrictions with starting a company in the US are easier. Like, you can pretty much anyone, I think, can start a Delaware company and then you can go raise money, whereas in China there's more restrictions, so that's a challenge. On top of that, I would say culture-wise, Silicon Valley in the US has been around for a long time, and so it has more of kind of a history and a precedent, whereas Shenzhen is more kind of new and it's about disrupting the status quo, but it's still not quite at the same level in terms of like the history. But I think on the other hand, the support from the government and from existing structures is stronger here. So it's really just kind of about letting that engine run so that the people and the overall environment can kind of catch up to the foundation that's already been laid in the groundwork, I'm sure, by people like we saw at this event who are behind the scenes working at that.
What do you think is the difficulties of smart hardware entrepreneurship here?
Community, language, the network. I think one of the values of this event is it's one of the opportunities that we get to really interact with the people in the government, because unlike in the US, which is largely a private world, here when there is such an impact with the government, it's important to be able to develop those types of relationships. And there's also just more regulations to consider, things like work visas, especially for someone like me. Like in the US, I don't have to worry about any visa because I'm a citizen. So that's definitely a challenge. And I would say, just because you have a limited foreign population, building strong networks of people together is a lot more challenging when most people don't speak English. And that's also a challenge for us, as we have to learn Mandarin. And that's something I'm taking on as a challenge because that's important. But like in the meantime, the language barrier is definitely a difficulty.
My name is Manfred Appel, nickname Apple, and I'm a German entrepreneur from Hamburg. And I'm running two companies. One company is a ship supply company, and the other one is a kind of consulting company, which is name is Apple Innovation.
And why do you came to Shenzhen to start a business?
because Shenzhen is the place to be. Because the second company which I'm running is looking for Chinese high-tech companies, and well, in Shenzhen, this is the place to be to find them.
Thank you. And as the global hardware Silicon Valley, Shenzhen has a very complete hardware supply chain system. What's your opinion about that? Do you agree or disagree, and why?
Well, I agree, because as my experience with these issues, I can agree totally with this, that Shenzhen will be with the own port and with own facilities, it will be the future city.
And what do you think are the differences between Shenzhen hardware Silicon Valley and American Silicon Valley?
Well, actually, I'm not familiar with the American Silicon Valley, but in my opinion, I would say that in Silicon Valley, American, it's only few companies which are really making the success. In comparison with China, there are much more companies. There's much more quantity and quality.
What do you think is the difficulties of smart hardware entrepreneurship here?
Well, the first, or my biggest challenge is the language, and all other things are to handle and to manage. There is good support with the authorities, as I said before, and that's why we are very satisfied with our position here.
Hi, my name is Alpha. I am a product developer.
Why did you come to Shenzhen to start a business and work?
I come to Shenzhen because I believe that Shenzhen it is the Silicon Valley of hardware.
As a global hardware Silicon Valley, Shenzhen has a very complete hardware supply chain. What's your opinion about this? Do you agree or disagree?
I totally agree. I think have you ever been to Huaqiang Bay? You should go there and take a look. As a product developer, really from the beginning of the product, from component sourcing to looking for a supplier to do your hardware, everything you can find in Huaqiang Bay. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I got you. What do you think are the differences between Shenzhen hardware Silicon Valley and the American Silicon Valley?
I think mainly the difference is the speed to make something happen. I think in the US, it takes much longer if you want to develop a product than you want to develop it in Shenzhen. In Shenzhen, literally you can develop a product in 2 months, right? From beginning to the product is finished.
What do you think is the difficulties of smart hardware entrepreneurship?
Smart hardware? I don't know, man. Oh, okay.
Last question.
What do you think is
No, but maybe say in Chinese because it's pretty difficult.
你认为智能硬件创业的痛点是什么？
Oh, I think the most difficult part it is the capital, is the money. But I think the Shenzhen government it is working on it. Is giving a lot of compensation, a lot of subsidies and help. Is offering to the startups and the people who wants to have a business in Shenzhen.
Hi there, my name is Emil Jersling, I'm Swedish. I'm a Swedish Shenzhen-based tech entrepreneur. And I've been here for 2.5 years working together with my partner who is a professor in quantum information at Sastek University and Nanfang Keji Daxue. And we're currently working on microenergy vibration harvesting devices for IoT applications mainly.
Okay, second question. Why did you come to Shenzhen to start a business or work?
I came here, as I mentioned, 2.5 years ago because my long-term friend and Swedish partner with whom I studied together with at Imperial College in London, while I was studying mechanical engineering, he was studying physics. We back then had some ideas for different businesses. and together worked on a business plan that won a prize in the first Imperial College business plan competition. And we've been keeping in touch since. When he moved to Singapore to study at the NUS, I was an MBA student at INSEAD at its Singapore campus. And 2.5 years ago, he took the role as professor here and invited me to come and help him on the exciting journey of building a hardware startup.
And as the global hardware Silicon Valley, Shenzhen has a very complete hardware supply chain system. What's your opinion about that? Agree or disagree? Why?
I think I would listen to the experts on their opinion about the complexity of the Shenzhen hardware supply ecosystem, as I've only worked through intermediaries when it comes to exploring that. And I guess I'm quite green still in that field. So I would be hesitant to take my own experience and make a judgment on that complex question.
What do you think are the differences between Shenzhen hardware Silicon Valley and American Silicon Valley?
From what I've heard from other people, but I'm afraid I will add little to the discussion. My friends who are working in Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs like myself, a lot of them are working in software. And this is very different from what I see happening here in Shenzhen, where a lot of people are working much more in the hardware side. But that's a superficial view without having a lot of personal experience of the Silicon Valley ecosystem.
What do you think is the difficulties of smart hardware entrepreneurship here?
Smart hardware, and let me understand the question. So I think the difficulties for smart hardware entrepreneurs depends very much on who you are. So I think in our case, being foreigners, for me it's always very important to understand the local language and customs in order to form really strong relationships with partners, team members, and potential investors. So one of the challenges for me has been learning the language, but I'm very happy to say that now after 1.5 years of effort, I'm making great strides on this challenge. And as we improve with this, I think we will make it easier to find great partners and great collaborators to work with.